Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are today. Thank you for coming to our Vivid Organized webinar. We will discuss today about how to deliver amazing apps fast in the idea economy, and we will touch on the DevOps transformation. As a speaker for today, next slide, please. All right. This webinar is brought to you by Vivid and by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. I will be your moderator for today. My name is Mihai Grigorescu, and it is my pleasure to be here as the Vivid chapter lead for Chicago, as well as the Accenture HP Alliance Global Testing Practice Lead. Today, I will have two very important people from HP, and very close to my heart as well, since they are in the ADM space. We have Rafi Margaliot, who is the Senior Vice President and a General Manager for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise for ADM, which is Application Delivery Management. His expertise includes driving the strategy, execution, and delivery of mobile IT analytics and all the next generation IT management as a service solutions. And of course, he is an adept at delivering innovative technology solutions that solve all of our customer problems. The second speaker for today is Tali Levy-Joseph, who is the VP for the R&D team, for the research and development team. So she basically manages all the think tanks that we have in HP Enterprise, all 1,000-person R&D team across 5 countries that are responsible for bringing us the best of the application delivery management solutions to us and to our clients. Without further ado, let's move over into a bit of housekeeping before we hand over to our presenters. Please remember this is a live session, so all of it is being recorded, and you don't have to worry about getting a slide deck in here and getting the recording. It will all be made available to you on the Vivid website after the webinar has finished in a couple of days. We will have a live session for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. In the meanwhile, I would urge you to please type in your questions in the questions pane. We will take your questions at the end of the hour. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. And we will have, for those of you who haven't used GoToWebinar, you will have the control panel on your right-hand side of the screen. You can toggle the window between full screen and window mode, and you also have the most important tab in there, which is the questions. So please feel free to ask all your questions away, and we will tackle them at the end of the presentation. That'll be all from my side. I look forward to addressing the questions with you. Now, over to you, Rafi.
Hi, everyone, and really thanks for your time listening to our webinar. We are in a super exciting time here at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and our focus at the group that I run is really about how to help deliver amazing applications faster than ever before. Before I dive into our portfolio and hand you over to Tali, who could share some of our own experience transforming to DevOps, I'd like to just briefly cover a recent announcement where all of the HP software division is actually going to be merging together with Microfocus. It's going to be one of the top 10 enterprise software companies in the world, and will be solely focused on enterprise software versus today at HPE, where we serve a wide range of hardware and networking and services as well. It's a great opportunity for us, together with Microfocus, to have a huge portfolio coming over from the HP software side and combine it with the Microfocus side to really be market leading in the enterprise software, one of the largest companies with a huge R&D investment and a great sales team that would help interact with our customers. And with that, I'd like to really start talking about our world in application delivery. The need for applications has never been greater. We see today that every single business is transforming into a digital business. Whether it's on the consumer side, as we look at transportation, as we look at media, as we look at healthcare, every single organization from every single industry is now investing heavily in adopting digital into their enterprise, leveraging digital interfaces and ability for customers, consumers, and employees to do a lot more things today with an app versus manually where things were done before. And this creates a lot of pressure on IT because now a lot of the business is becoming IT, and it requires a lot of change across all fronts. If we look at the new world of applications, we have a whole set of new technologies that need to be supported. If applications in the past were built for laptops or desktops, today every application has to take into account all the different form factors, whether it's tablets or smartphones or watches, have to take into account lots of different browsers. It's not just IE anymore, but any application has to run on Chrome, has to run on Safari, has to run on Firefox, and a whole set of operating systems from iOS to Android to Linux, a huge range of technologies out there. And really the last thing where we see a lot of change is at the pace. If in the past we were delivering application once a year, once every few quarters, today we need to have every quarter, every month, almost every week, some kind of incremental enhancements. And that really requires all organizations to move much, much faster than before. And the challenge with moving fast is sometimes you have to compromise on quality as you do that. Our portfolio set is really targeted to help you balance the speed and quality, where you can deliver new apps that run on every device and every form factor, scale to millions of users, and provide incremental value as the delivery pace exceeds. And for this, I'd like to share some of our own experience at HP Software, and specifically in the application delivery management business unit. We've been doing this transition ourselves. We have hundreds of different products, and specifically in our years, we got to grow in our core products up to about 15, and all of that while increasing speed and not compromising at all on quality or on budgets. To share some of our own journey and some of our own challenges and how we overcome them, I'd like to hand it over to Tali Levy-Joseph, who runs our R&D for the Application Delivery Management Business Unit.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rafi. So I'm very happy to attend and speak to you all today about our transition into DevOps. So over the past few years, we've been very busy and focused on transitioning the way we plan, execute, and deliver into DevOps. And, you know, I wish I could tell you this great story of, you know, when and what was the exact point where it all started and happened for us. But the truth is that there isn't one, because we kind of grew to this change, and for us it was more of an evolution rather than a revolution. But while doing it, we have managed to play more offense rather than defense. So we basically managed to stay ahead of the curve rather than below it. You see, back then we did sense that the world as we knew it is going to change for us, and if we don't do anything about it, we will be left behind. And looking back, I mean, you don't just do DevOps just for the sake of DevOps. I mean, and looking back, we could definitely identify a couple of key drivers and triggers that you see here on the screen to this transformation. So the first one is the breadth of portfolio. We had to increase dramatically in the breadth of our product. And in 4 years, we have grew from 8 products that we have released to more than 15 products. So while continuing to have to maintain and enhance and refresh the existing portfolio, we've managed to release the next generation set of solutions that we developed, like ALM Octane, Storm Runner Load, Mobile Center, Virtualization Suite, and so on. The second point was around the frequency of releases. So as you all deal with and know, market has become more and more agile in customer demands as well. So due to that, we've made a conscious decision to release more smoothly and frequently to the market. And of course, to move to a software as a service mode had also accelerated it, because we had to release every almost 4 to 8 weeks. So it was then became very clear for us that we need to change the way we work. We need to first accelerate development, second to shorten stabilization cycles because of that, and also maintain the same level of confidence in quality, and even make it better. So we have managed to go from periodic builds to QA every 2 to 4 weeks. We moved to daily and even hourly in every check-in that triggered, something like a short QA cycle or a short automation cycle. Obviously, automation became a key for us. It wasn't, it became a commodity. We needed to make automation work for us, not only in testing, but automate the entire pipeline. There are many more changes that I could speak for hours that, happened as well, because we're a global company, so we had to deal with offshore as well. And the talent has changed. Technology aspects were changed. Well, some of them I will talk, further in the presentation. But if I look at it, the whole change, just trying to see where is the next slide. So Jennifer, I think you should help me with that, please. Thank you. So the whole change, if I look at it, it comes down to these 3 elements: technique, talent, and technology. We'll start with technology. And I think, when I speak about technologies, there are 2 dimensions. The first one is the tool set that enables us to automate the process. So the DevOps, the technology around the DevOps tool chain. The other dimension is the tech that we use in order to build our software. And there is an interesting debate whether the change in technology had led to DevOps or DevOps had led to technology like microservices and so on. But the fact is that technology is a major part in the change that was done. The other aspect is the talent, and I think you would all agree that talent is the heart of everything. It's all about us, the people. It's about engaging people, it's about training people, and it's about communicating with people and also measuring people. And we'll talk about talent and people as well. And I left techniques for the end because techniques for us is the bridge between tech and talent. So it's the glue that sticks it all together. It's techniques around the work that we're doing, and it's techniques around the measurements that we're doing. And there's another thing that, I haven't mentioned in this slide, but it's there all the time. And this is like the abstract thing of culture. It's there because it's the way we react to things. It's the way we reflect to our people. It's how, the hidden behaviors that we have, what we recognize for, what we don't recognize for, what's important for us as managers, and how we reflect it to the entire team. So for me, culture is there all the time, and it's there behind and in front of the stage. So what I like to do now is drill down a little bit more to each one of the elements. And of course, there's a lot to say about each one of the elements, but I'll try, to give you some aspects of what we did and some tips maybe on how we did it. So we'll start with techniques. So there's so many things that, I wish I could tell you about techniques, but I want to focus on some aspects in the area of techniques and processes. So if we can go back to, if we can go to the next slide. So the first one is you have to define the framework first, to define your, it's written here, the push to production cadence. But even before that, to be able to define the, what we call the Agile release train. So one of the biggest change that we did in our transition as part of it is basically be able to come up with an Agile release train model. And if you think about it, we basically wanted to operate more like a train leaving Grand Central, which is on schedule, on time, rather than, taxis leaving the Bronx, which, end up happens, when you try to work in Agile and ad hoc releases sometimes. So this framework was very important for us. And it was important for us because for us it will shorten the release cycles and still get the great features in front of customers, when they're ready. So to have these stations. And the second point is make the schedule more predictable and easier to scope for us internally, for the rest of the development teams, but also for the field and our external customers. And the third point would be to reduce the overhead of integration and engineering. So all of the team knows exactly when they need to release, and if they're not ready, they just don't release on that same station. They release on the following station. So just to give you a sense of how it looks for us, we'll go to the next slide. So this is, we have defined these stops every 3 months, and this doesn't include, of course, the SaaS products, because in SaaS we have a monthly releases, but we have stops, and each Agile team can jump on each stop. And when we know which products choose to go on, each stop, we know exactly what are the requirements also for integration. And it also reduced the overhead of version numbers and compatibility with other products, so it's much easier for us. So as soon as we define if we can go back to the slide. So as soon as we defined this, we were able to align the teams on these stations. Can we go back, please, to this previous slide? Thanks. The second thing would be priorities and focus, and this is critical because you can't do it all, and especially when you have such a high frequency of releases, you have to focus on the right features and the capabilities to be released. So it's a lot of planning work, obviously a dynamic planning work that you have to be with your internal customers and external customers and product management in order to exactly know and focus on the things that must be delivered, in each of the station. Automation, and this, leads to the third point, which is the MVP. What is the requirements that leads you to a minimal viable product? And not try to do more than that if it's not needed, because this is what's great about releasing in a frequent mode. Then you can definitely go on the next station and release the rest of the capabilities, but then you can see also validation on the previous capabilities that you've shared with your customers and maybe do some adjustments there. So work on the smallest viable portion that you need. Now, of course, and I mentioned it before, rely heavily on automation. And automation, not only testing automation, but automation of the entire pipeline. And we can talk about it in the technology part. Done is done. I'm sure you've all heard about, the terminology, done is done. But I think that, the critical thing would be to define what is done. And I know there are many variations and definitions, but whether done is you've completed development, whether you've completed development and testing, whether you completed development, testing, and validation with gradual deployment, whether done is deploying the capability. So this is critical for you to define what is done. And once you define it, stick to it and make sure to validate these points. Continuous feedback is critical as well, because for us, continuous feedback is the way, how much we can involve our internal and external customers in the process. So it's betas, it's design partners, it's gradual crowd testing, so to have a gradual deployment to get more validations into the cycle. So continuously operate mechanisms that will enable you to get more and more feedbacks, meaningful feedbacks throughout the cycles. Now, if I go 2 slides forward, I can maybe share with you some of the screenshots. We are using, obviously, Octane, which is the next generation of ALM that provides us the ability to work Agile, of course, provides us visibility into the pipeline. Everything is automated, traced. So what you can see here is just, a screenshot of the way we cover, our tasks and requirements. So obviously, you can see the feature status, which is done, but there are many other parameters that we track and are important for us to track. And of course, this can all be adjustable, and varies from team to team or from project team to project team. Now, if I go to the next slide, we can also see some screenshots that provide us the visibility into our automation. So it's very important for us. I mean, automation for us is not only doing testing. Obviously, there isn't such phase as testing. It all comes together. So it's development and testing, as unit testing. It's development of API. It's development of UI testing, and we keep tracking those as well and see the trends, and we keep tracking coverage. And of course, when we're dealing with multiple platforms that we have to run the scripts on, I mean, automation is the biggest key here. If I go back to the next slide, so this is just one example of how we track our automation per area. Okay, so I haven't included the next screenshot, but there are many other aspects that we can see throughout the process of, how many teams and what are the statistics around the defect, around done, so we can then track like bottlenecks, whether it's teams or whether it's dependencies. So everything is very visible and very convenient for us. So let's move on to talent, which is the heart, in my opinion, because tech processes are very important, but we need the right people to take advantage of, processes and technology. So if we go to the next slide, so around talent, I think that we see that in Agile, we have managed to, and we need to, improve communication, relationships, and remove barrier. And this is highly important that we do it also around our people. And it can be symbolic, it can be physically. So for example, I know there are many variations of how QA teams are structured within development teams. There are QA teams that are now part of development teams. There are QA that are partnering with development teams. There are still automation center of excellence and quality center of excellence. But I think the biggest thing is, it doesn't really matter how you're structured. I know there are many advantages and disadvantages, but the fact that you have to understand and recognize that it's development and testing are one now. And it can be physically that you need to put them together close to each other. It can be physically, part of their organization, each other organization, and it can be symbolically. Us as managers keep preaching that it's the responsibility of both teams, of all of us, to make it happen. Especially if you look at Agile teams, it's all verticals. It's all virtual teams and also physical teams, but it's the responsibility of all of the functions to make it happen. And again, it's a cultural thing, it's a behavioral thing, but it's also a structural thing that we do. So this is highly important. The other thing we need to make sure is, when we're looking at the DevOps toolchain, we need to make sure that both organizations, the quality and development, are working on the same toolchain, because they should contribute to the same toolchain. So if we're working on Jenkins, so also QA engineers now need to have the skill set of understanding and knowing how to work with CI systems, because a lot of the automation will go through there, and also a lot of the troubleshooting of what failed will also go through there. So we need to make sure that we have the skill set, and we need to make sure that we're working on the exact same tool chain with the development organization. The other thing which is important and is happening these days, I mean, we talked about skill set, but the modern QA engineers or the modern QA automation engineer needs to have the skill set of multiple tools and disciplines and to support them in their daily work. And I know that, QA had the benefit of working in a much wider aspect of how they work, like a system-wide view and a customer and a business understanding. It's all good. It will stay. But we need to expand the skill set that QA needs to have now. And I think that it's a transformation that we have to do. And there are many talents that we'll have to maybe change and enhance their skill set and get also new talent to the organization. But this is something that we should be aware of. The other thing, by the way, that we did is also establish the Department of DevOps. So this is it's a high-rise thing now in the market, and there are specific people with a specific skill set that knows how to deal with all of the IT aspects of everything, and we need to have these great people with us. So we have established this organization under one umbrella, by the way, because they need to share their expertise, and we need to be able to have this DevOps Center of Excellence that will contribute to the entire organization. So if we go another slide, we go to the next slide. So just to give you a perspective now, and this is a real cube of what we call a modern QA engineer that have their Jenkins monitor and needs to understand the status in the CI, everything that is happening. Needs to have one of the screen you see a mobile center, so you see all of the platform that we're running, scripts on mobile devices. It's all virtualized, of course. IDE is open. ALM Octane with a pipeline summary is open. So it's like a multitasking thing, and you need to keep and watch on all of these parameters all together. No one said we have an easy life here, but this is technology, and this is the innovative work of us keeping it all together. So if we go to the next slide, please. This is another example of how the QA dashboard looks like. So just an example, of course, everyone can adjust their own dashboard, but just to give you a perspective, so QA manager looks at, their manual versus automated assets. And of course, you can, if you view it carefully, you can see, there are many types of testing: acceptance, end-to-end, regression, and sanity. And of course, each package should run on its own timing, which is right on every trigger, daily, nightly, etc. We have environment coverage. Of course, we have all these environments that we have to cover. So you can see all of the environments in one view. Defects, aging, per iteration. We need to strive more and more. Done is done. It means zero defect. Critical, medium. It's based on the definition. So we want to make sure that we're all tracking it, and also the CI trends. So in Octane, and you'll see it later in technology, we're able to connect to Jenkins and see all of the results within Octane from Jenkins. So everything is imported and to Octane, and you can see traceability between the runs in the CI, between the defects and tests and requirements. So everything is traced together. So if I go to the next slide, we're basically just want to give you some examples of, some of the assets that we have managed to create. And some numbers just to give you perspective on the results that we had, within this transition. And to go to the next slide, just to summarize, the critical aspects about talent. So for us, a lot has to do with investing in talent, in training and methodologies, not only for QA, for all of the teams, because it's a game where, we all play. Leverage QA experience and professionalism. Provide the right tooling and support, of course. Find a skill set to balance between the team members. It's all about balance. As I said, you still need to have the business perspective of QA. You still need to have the integration perspective. You still need to have the wide system perspective, but you also need to have the drill down perspective as well, and dev perspective as well. So it's all about balance, of course. And of course, there's not such, like this great formula that we can all work according to. It's about building it to fit your needs and your organization needs. And only after you define it, you manage to have the right talent to support it. So this is, there isn't any like this exact formula to each and every organization how to implement DevOps. It's all about, this is not a goal, DevOps. DevOps is not a goal, but you need to have your own goals, whether it's accelerating releases, whether it's efficiency, whatever it will be. After you define your exact goals, then you define the processes, techniques, and technology that you will use. And that leads us to the last aspect of technology. Well, technology, we have managed to identify a couple of challenges. And I'll talk about the three main ones, but of course there's a lot to cover around technology. The first challenge is around how to integrate quality throughout the process. So, we're no longer in a waterfall mode where you were used to develop and then test, and everything was, in a way very simple. But now it's a different story. We have to accelerate. We have to be more efficient. We can't wait till the regression testing to find out defects. We have to work in a much more productive and efficient manner. So I think the first thing that we need to do is be able to choose the testing framework that will integrate with our CI. And it can be commercial, it can be open source, obviously, and it needs to be a joint for QA and dev, obviously. We're using Jenkins, we're using LeanSP, we're using Octane. And once, we define this tool, of course, we have to train and set the right methodologies around the tool set. And we have to understand exactly each tool set, each tool and its goal. And for example, in LeanSP we have a set of scripts, so we need to run this package on a nightly basis, on a weekly basis. So not only define the tool that you're going to use, but build the processor around the tool and the content that will run from the tool. The other thing is tests should be an integral part of the code, and this also, it should come to this very single developer that they're no longer only responsible for developing the code and the capabilities and the requirements, but also fulfill the testing requirements. And we're looking at unit testing and API testing, and of course complete it with also, with QA engineers that will also do UI testing, but also API testing, obviously. And as I said, define what to test for each step of the process. So, for example, on each commit, you don't have to run the entire regression cycle. It will only be an overhead, and then you have to troubleshoot everything. But define the critical mass of procedures that needs to run after every activity that you do. If we go to the next slide, the other challenge would be how to get visibility across the tool chain. So obviously, as I said, visibility is a key part. We have a lot of assets and processes that we deal with, and in each step of the way, we need to understand where we're at exactly and what can be done in order to improve or stay on that track, if it's a good track. So for that, and again, if I look at the phases, it's plan, define, build, test, and track. So for us, if we go to our next slide, in Octane, we have developed a lot of views for each step and phase in the process. So for example, I was talking about CI. So in Octane here, we've managed, as I said, to integrate with Jenkins. And of course, we're doing it with other CI tools as well. But we have a built-in integration with Jenkins. And then, as you see in the left pane, you can see all of the runs that were done on the CI. So you see all of the packages, the nightly, the on-premise deployment, quick CI on every check-in. So you see in one view all of the runs that you've ran, and also a drill down on the right side of the screen. You see a drill down to the actual task, and then their duration, and of course their status. And this is for developers, managers, but also for QA. So if I go to the next slide as well, you can also see a screenshot of the dashboard that we're using. Of course, as I said, we're running on a lot of platforms, each and every one of the tests. So you can see here, what we see here is also part of what we call predictive. So we're able in Octane to track with monitoring tools that we use, we're able to track flows in production, and we're managed to correlate them with flows in the testing. And then, I mean, if you look at the production coverage, we're able to see what is the percentage of the correlating flows that we've ran in testing that are correlated to what happens in production. So you can basically see your production coverage here. So it gives you a sense of what is the portion of tests that are really correlated to what is being done in production. We can also see, I mean, test view by the platform browsers, also environments, dev, production, QA, and staging, and other views, as you see, the daily injection, defect daily injection, and trends, defects gaps that weren't, in which stage they were discovered, and also test burn up. If we go to the next slide, we're also able to see another view of progress of the quality. So obviously the defect trends over time and how many are closed and open. We can see each of the service. Of course, we moved to a microservices approach, so we can look in every contained component, and look at it, its quality status according to its test. But obviously, you can see also defect status. You can look at it from breakdown of features as well, story burn down, user story completion status, etc., etc. So visibility is a critical part of every process and procedures that you implement. And if you don't track it, you're not able to improve. So this is a critical part. And again, we use, for us, Octane is a critical tool that we use for management and for all of the levels. Of course, each level and role can define its own, their own view. So if we go to the next slide, and basically this third challenge is how to scale across technology. And it's about to scale across platforms that you should use in production, but how you do Agile and you do DevOps in a scale team. in an enterprise mode. So when you have 200 developers in your organization, the system has to be stable all the time. There are many developers that are working on the same platform. Every hour, something like 100 check-in and changes in the code are being done. We have to make the system stable. How hardware is not a blocker for us. So we have, I mean, if I look at the solutions that we've implemented or the aspects that we looked at, so obviously automation, and again, you look at, I mean, you see it all through the presentation. Automation testing and automated deployment is a key. I mean, you can no longer rely on manual procedures and manual testing because you can't scale in enterprise mode. You have many developers that are working on the same product. There's no way that we can scale manually to this.
Hey, Tali?
Yes.
Sorry, just a quick time check. We've got about less than 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you. The second part is virtualization. So obviously you all know and aware that you can't test it all on, you know, specific phase because not everything is ready. And I'm not talking about UI, but also API is not completely ready. But this is where virtualization comes into place. So you have to use virtualization in order to remove roadblocks. And we have in our portfolio also virtualization tools like service virtualization that we use even before everything is written. But we have to do it from efficiency perspective, not to come to a point where you know, we find ourselves blocked because things were not tested to integrate together. So we use heavily virtualization in our development cycles. Harness the power of cloud. I mean, I think that you all aware of this, you know, advantage that we have now with cloud. We can scale like enormously now and use the power of cloud to generate environments, to generate you know, platforms and again, especially environments and stabilizing environment and testing environment. So we heavily use today in ADM the cloud for this. Design services with minimal dependencies. So I think, you know, if I look at the whole thing, is we have to think big in order to change, but you have to start with small. And for me, small is cut everything into the smallest contained packages or component. So to have minimal dependencies, to cut the code into this, you know, what we call microservices, and to strive to have the minimal dependencies and to be as much as self-contained services as possible. What we call decouple them as much as we can, and to have an end-to-end, and to give more and more responsibilities to teams on components which are self-contained and end-to-end, and have an end-to-end, you know, flow there. And it's a lot of work around the planning and designing of things, but I can tell you that it's totally worth it. We're doing it in all of the next generation products that we now develop, and it's constantly proves itself to be very efficient and very productive. Now, the last thing would be to work with vertical teams, and this is all about what Agile, I mean, this is what Agile is all about. We're having one team, the whole end-to-end thing, to have planners and PMOs, to have developers, to have testers, to have architects, to have UI, and to have documentation. This is the only way to scale. Otherwise, if you try, and you can do it virtually or physically, but otherwise, you will have bottlenecks there. So if I go to the next slide, which mostly summarizes things for us around technology, you know, if I go back to things that I've already emphasized, is, I mean, and what we've learned. So the first thing is to break into pieces, and this is what we call the microservices, end-to-end, self-contained as much as we can, in the independent. We do give teams, and this is important, we do give teams flexibilities and freedom around choosing their technology. I think this is also part of what Agile offers. As long, and this is a big as long as they communicate over REST APIs and provide the single user experience. This is highly important. So each UI expert, which is located in an Agile team, should work together to make sure that we leverage the same UI patterns and platforms that we use in order to create a single user experience. And same goes for REST. Architects should make sure that we're all speaking in the same language. Invest in continuous delivery heavily to achieve the automated production updates. And this is the DevOps pipeline that I've talked about. And around the data, and data for testing and cross systems that we use in integration testing, and everything should be constant in all of the teams that are using it. I wish I could, stand in front of you and talk more and more on the, other aspects which are not mentioned here, but I think, it's time for me to stop and maybe let you digest things and open it for question. I would be, by the way, very happy to share with you. We did a short clip and, a movie on how we did things like visually. So you can see some screenshots and like actual people talk about the transition, and hopefully after this vivid webinar, we can maybe share it with all of the participants. So I think I will hand it over to Jennifer or Amichai.
Well, great. So before we start with the questions and answers, I would like to just tell everybody that, to remind everybody that we have the Discover conference in for London happening between November 29th and December 1st. It's a great opportunity for you to come there and to leverage the great presence of HP in there. So most likely you will meet up with Tali and Rafi in there. You also see other clients and also see other partners of HP's in there as well. Also remember that through Vivid you would get a member discount. So just remember to add in your Vivid membership to get that discount. There's a lot of good sessions happening in Discover. You can see over here in this slide just the top 10 reasons to attend. We're not going to go through each and every single one of them. Remember, this deck will be made available to you through the recording. And before we say thank you and goodbye, let's take some questions and let's see what actually people think about the presentation and what are the questions. So I will go and ask away. So Tali, the first question that we have today was, how long did it take you to change the way you work in R&D?
So I mean, if I look at the whole journey, so we've started this something like 3 years ago, but again, we did it gradually. We did it based on demands, in each team, whether there was more urgency around, for example, SaaS, the delivery mechanism. There is a differentiation between on-prem and SaaS. But I would say, like, and by the way, it's an ongoing journey because we still explore and do more and more improvements. But I would say that we've been doing it for the past 3.5 years.
Of course, I was talking on mute. Apologies for that. Tali, the second question is also directed at you. Do you use open source in R&D?
Yes, we do.
Okay, can you give some examples, maybe?
Yeah. So first of all, we do, and in some areas we use, for example, also Selenium. We embrace Selenium. We also embrace Selenium also in our tools. LeanFD can run and replay basically Selenium scripts. So we use that, and we use other open sources as well. I think it's part of, it becomes, you know, a critical part and a must part in every development organization, and we have found a way also to embrace it also in our products that we develop.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you for that. And we have two more questions at Rafi. So, with the spin merge, will HPE still be investing in the ALM portfolio?
Sure. So, great question, and I think the answer is, of course, yes. We see the merger with Microfocus as a great opportunity, as will be primarily, you know, the whole company focused just on enterprise software, and we see continued on investment in our ALM portfolio, and whether it's our existing products, our next generation products such as Octane, Storm Runner Load, and Mobile Center, as well as our overall investment in the future. There's a lot of synergies with the Microfocus portfolio as well, so we expect to see growing investment in all areas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that information, Rafi. And the other question also aimed at you is, what are some of the things that you will be shown at Discover, that you'll be showing at Discover?
So in Discover, one will be there in person. Myself and my team, Tali, and most of her staff will be there. So there's a great opportunity for one-on-one conversations with the team. One, to talk about our roadmaps and our portfolio, and the second, to share our own experience in more details, as Tali covered at the high level. And then we'll have demo booths showing out all of our portfolio, the next versions of Quality Center, ALM, Load Runner, and definitely all of our next generation products such as Mobile Center, Storm Runner Load, and ALM Octane. All of them are going to be demoed in Discover, and we'll have lots of sessions, whether it's HP people or customers and partners, talking about and sharing their experiences and the success they had using our portfolio.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you, Rafi. And Tali, we just had two more questions popping up at you. So I'll combine the two. So, is the CI environment considered a dev environment? And do you have any controls in that environment? And are the drops scheduled?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Can you repeat, please?
Right. So the first question is your CI environment considered a development environment?
Continuous development environment?
Yes.
Yes.
So do you, yeah, right. And then in this CI environment, do you have any controls, and are you scheduling your drops?
So we do have, I mean, if I understand correctly, so we do have control points that we do trigger to Octane to, I mean, in terms of, you know, the pass and fail and nightly and triggered by any check-in. We did, I mean, we have packages that runs from the CI that are triggered to a specific event, if this is what you're asking. So it depends on every package that is run. I mean, there are packages that run on every check-in. There are packages that run on a nightly manner. There are packages that run on an hourly manner. And everything is reported back to Octane, so we see the status on every control point.
Okay, great stuff. Well, I think we are officially done with the questions. I don't see any more questions coming through. So with that note, I would like to thank Rafi and Tali for the exquisite presentation and insight into the DevOps transformation and how HP is using these same principles within their own organization. So thank you, Tali. Thank you, Rafi. I look forward to seeing you in Discover. And for the rest of the participants, thank you as well for taking the time and participating and listening to Rafi and Tali. And if you would like to complete the short survey and opt in information from HP, please go to hp.com or to our Vivid website. Until the next time, I wish you all the best. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.